Are you if a woman asks a woman you're interested asks you for it, are you gonna be like, "Nah, it lost its allure for me"?
I
As
probably
for what,
wouldn't.
dick pics or what?
Yeah,
Wait,
I don't
unless
think.
it was your wife, because you said that you like want to fulfill her in every way, correct?
Not even my
Yeah.
wife.
You don't think
My bad.
that would be your wife?
Yeah, if it's my wife, there's literally I don't believe in no. You know what I mean? Like that's
My,
like
my,
Oh, hold on. You
spousal
want to
rape.
rephrase
Like
that?
what even is that? No, I'm saying
My-
like no for my
I
spouse.
know
Like
you
I
mean.
don't like there's no such thing as spousal
Yeah.
rape because you get whatever the freak you
But-
want from you. I get whatever the freak I want from you.
the only
Okay, did
reason
I
I
go
would
too far?
He meant
No,
that in a certain context.
fanatic.
He didn't mean
My argument for why
I'm kidding.
my argument for why I wouldn't send nudes, even if it's to my wife, is because hacking exists. Somebody can
Yeah.
take that phone. It's just unnecessary risk.
It
And
is.
so
That is.
I simply just
I would do it,
FaceTime you. I'll give it to you live. I'll do a
Yeah.
FaceTime with you.
Yeah.
I'll give it to you a live show.
I would do it for my wife. It's just she's got to be responsible. I think there's very little that I would not do for somebody that I'm like super duper committed to.
Are you married or you mean your future wife?
Future.
Oh.
Was
So-
engaged, didn't work out, and I'm happier for it.
Thank goodness it didn't work out.
Listen,
Woo.
for me,
Simi.
but for me, right, I think that if a person was like, "Hey, send it," I'd be like, "Come over." I wouldn't just send it. I feel like that's an invitation for other things that you could possibly test the waters with. It's not consent by any stretch of the imagination, but it's like, hey, maybe there's something here, or maybe she's just collecting like a demon. Like some people might just have that as a thing they count to.
I got
don't know,
one
I'm just
meat
talking
pick from like 2017. I'm
Whoa.
about to say that's what you're getting. If you're getting the 2017 meat pick, if that's what you want.
What?
I'm not taking no fresh dick
Old
pic.
meat?
That's the
You giving her some old meat?
That's all. That's
saying
all
you
you
have
get.
a
Don't ask for it.
resume, you have an
I don't
outdated
typically
resume.
send it out, but like I'll tell it to a girl. Like I don't lie about it. She's like, oh, send a picture of dick. I was like, I got a picture of my dick from like 2017 in the Google Drive.
Giving her aged meat.
That's all you getting. I think like 30 plus. You don't just take new nudes anymore. I don't think you like taking dick pics at 30.
You know, speaking of like demanding news, like some women are some women that I've experienced like are sometimes very demanding with their requests. There was a time like when I was in college, you know, I didn't drink at all.
You can
And there was
say
this girl. What was that?
I'm just kidding. You go.
When I was in college, I didn't drink at all. And there was this girl that like demanded that I come in over and like she wanted to be the first. She wanted to be the first one to have a drink with me. It's like, please come on. And this was like somebody I was like, kind of like, interested in sexually, but then I just turned all the way off when she was like so demanding, like, come on, drink with me, drink with me, drink. She must have repeated it 30 times. And I was
Was
like,
it
bro,
trapped to something personal for you, like the concept of?
Were you still
alcohol
Muslim then?
consumption?
no, it's not about being Muslim. I just personally didn't like drinking or didn't want to drink. Right. And just for a person, like just cause there's no real reason.
Okay.
But it was just like,
Sure.
why don't you respect that? I was telling her, hey, I can come over. Like, if you want me to come over, I can come over. Like, why do I have to drink? If you want me to come over? She's like, no, if you come over, you gotta drink. You gotta drink. Like, oh wow.
As a person who also, I don't know if you drink now. But as
Who's
a
popping
person,
bottles in the club?
so yeah, I don't drink as well. So this sounds all very familiar, especially back in college. But even afterwards, you know, being pressured to drink, like women like intimating that, oh, we might be able to do something if you take this drink. I'm like,
Yeah.
see, like keep it in your pants. I don't need this.
Uh-huh.
But I was actually going to make a comment on like to Zimmy. So like something I've been thinking about is that when something that just comes up over and over again is how we treat women in this space, right, compared to men. And like
This
like
space.
being online, the online digital space when we have these conversations, right? So you know, the goal, especially when I first started, was like, all right, we'll just treat everyone the same. But that hasn't like always worked out, right? And so like in one recent area that this come up with is that, you know, on these conversations, we're free, we're loose, right? And just like how it happens all the time, we kind of just stumbled into a sexual topic, right? That wasn't the goal. We didn't start there, but that's how that's where we ended up, right? And for guys, right, like like if I want to ask about like something in their past, in their sexual past, I'll just like ask them, right? I'm like, hey, like what are you up to? You know? And most of the times they'll just tell you, like, well, whatever, right? But to your point about like women and shame, right? Like, if I do that for a woman, she might answer, but she might feel like super uncomfortable about it. And like, because like, I guess maybe feeling that like the audience might be looking at it in a more prurient sense, right? Like, now it becomes a bit more voyeuristic rather than just like fun, maybe. And so if there's a bunch of guys in the room, I'll ask the guys, like I'll ask like, bam, like what'd you get up to, right? But then I'll ask a woman like, what like what have you been hearing from your friend circle, right? About this act, you know? Trying to like give them a bit of distance. So yeah, and it seems to be helpful, but yeah, it's something on my mind.
I think it's very smart. That
Yeah.
lets because sometimes I feel like, men will act a little bit dumb about like if you were to ask like, well, have you done XYZ? And they're kind of like taken aback, then it's like, oh, we were all talking about it. And it's like,
Mm.
okay, but the consequences and the judgment are not going to be the same for her. So I feel like it takes another level of thought to be like, let me frame this in this way. And then if she's comfortable, right? Because like there's some women who are like, I don't give a fuck. I'm going to talk about whatever I want to talk about. But you can get like a clear sense of that. And I feel like that's just how you engage with people in general. Like you kind of feel them out, you get a sense of what they're comfortable with instead of just, jumping in. I don't know. I feel like that's a smart way to do it in like a respectful way that allows them to have agency. Go ahead.
Yeah, that difference in judgment is like hyper well founded. Because as it stands now, and has been for quite a while, women are the gatekeepers to sex. And they have been forever. And for men, it is a challenge, a conquest to be able to acquire sex. Whereas for women, we're oriented differently, so they can get it whenever they want to. And so it's because of the fact that it's simple and it doesn't require any kind of challenge. Then I think we tend to judge women for promiscuity more so than we do men. But again, I think that's well founded because we praise people for things that are challenging. We praise people for hard work. We praise people for dedication. We praise people for conquest. Um, and I don't. It's really hard to call it a conquest for a woman to be like, "Oh, I slept with 100 person," assuming she's not like a beluga whale. It's There's no challenge there. The average dude is like, "Yeah, even if I'm not really even hyper attracted to you, I'd be." So in reality, we tend to judge women because of the fact if she's giving it up to that way, then that means she's not particularly challenging at all. She's not gatekeeping at all. She's just an open door.
Quick follow up to that, Fanatic. Would you say the same for like super attractive men that women throw themselves at?
No, I
That they're
wouldn't.
Why
because
not?
I don't, because I still think even with super attractive men that a lot of women are still going to be like hyper reserved regarding it because of the fact that they know that they're going to be incredibly shamed if they just give it up like that. I don't think even
I
for
would.
crazy attractive men, I still think that they have to put in some work, and I think and it normally comes at a cost. Attractive men pay for sex, like high earning men pay for sex. What do they
Hmm.
call it? What do they call not what's Kevin
Escorts?
I'm
Samuel's
I'm a
stupid
bit
phrase?
confused.
High value men, quote
Mm.
unquote. I hate that phrase. It's so nonsense. But high value men pay for sex, right?
That just
So
that just hasn't been my experience, but maybe you're speaking broadly.
I don't
in
know. I think
general, you still
What
have
is
to
Yeah,
put
that?
in work.
Your experience that?
my experience is that I like, especially in college, right? Like there was just especially being in Atlanta, where being a straight man, you're in the minority, and so and you're being outnumbered by the female counterpart in the schools because more women are going to be in schools. So just because of the demand and supply, the demand being women want a man, and the supply being like there's not a lot of straight men of high quality there. And I believe that I was one of those few available men out there that was like that. I felt like it was pretty easy because I believe that I'm fairly good looking, and there was just a lot of just ample prime real estate, and honestly, it wasn't that hard. at
I
all.
think
think
college
college
is a
is a lot
unique
easier.
place. Yeah,
Yeah.
college is like a
That's-
unique point
that
in
doesn't
life.
help out.
So that's what I'm saying.
Because
Like,
there's like a lot of
is it
hormones.
because
There's a lot of people freshly the first time they've been away from home. Like, and there's like a really just high desire for like sex generally.
it's
I think once you get out of
absolutely.
that, people's lives sort of like they kind of even out and they realize like, okay, I've had a little bit of freedom. I'm older than 23 now,
And then you
and
drink crazy in college because you are underage and y'all got to sneak
I
bottles.
was sober game. It was
And-
100% sober game.
And to
Yeah, for
Fanatic's
you, but
point,
we're saying women in general.
Yeah.
And
I know, I know.
I think there's
Two
also.
fanatics
I'm just kidding.
point.
I'm just kidding.
Hold on, there's
Fanatics.
yeah. Just a quick thing, then I'll go to Joe. But it's just to Fanatic's point. You talked about like high value men using escorts. Well, I literally was just reading an article. This article is 12 years old actually, but I stumbled upon this right. That there was this former Disney exec. He was former the head of Miramax, right? This dude who like went to Harvard and he had like he had like become like the CFO of fucking Disney like in like 5 some years. He was like his career was exploding. This guy, right?
Let's be honest.
Hold on, let me tell my story, please. This African American guy, and he like they thought he was going to replace like was it Bob Eisner or whatever as the head of Disney. Like that's how like his career trajectory was. But then he made some unbelievably stupid mistakes, but he was trying to sleep not with escorts, actually with porn stars. They thought they were shooting he literally ended up releasing a scene with a porn star that like who thought like this was a regular actor, right? But it wasn't. He was just trying to get her in bed, and so he filmed it. Right? It's like, oh, you're not escorting, right? We're filming a scene, and then it got leaked, and he like lost his entire everything because of this.
Whoa.
But the point is that like if you're talking about a high value man, right? This guy fit the bill perfectly, right? He was that, but that didn't stop him.
I think I think there's an equivocation with high value man. And the reason why is because a lot of people mean high value man. You're a high value man because you make X amount of money. But I generally think that just because you make a lot of money doesn't mean you're high value in the sense that worthy of praise. In the sense that because what I imagine somebody to be high value is to be like well rounded, right? Like you should like praise the person that can do it all, that has a skill or different avenues, not just can make a lot of money, because somebody can just be like behind their desk and coding, and then they made an app like Flappy Bird, and overnight they made millions of dollars. They suddenly high value managers because like they just know how to code well. Like I don't think so. So to all these great men out there, the high value so-called high value men that need to buy sex, I don't think they're high value because they lack the social skills necessary in order to get it for free.
No, that's not.
Or maybe they want, or maybe
no, you're incorrect there. That's not how that works, right? You're thinking.
Wait, what am I incorrect about?
You're a lot of things, right? Sorry, Joe. I will go to you because I know you had something to say. So I haven't gotten.
I go
back to
after
you.
Joe.
Oh, okay. After Joe. All right. So Joe and then Zimmy.
put me in there.
Yeah. Okay. I guess we got lots of things to say here, right? Like, yes, there are some people who are socially inept who see sex workers. That's absolutely the case, right? But if that's what you think the extent of it is, then like you have a very like narrow view. All kinds of men, like we've had sex workers on this channel. And they talk about it, right? Like actually on this channel talking about this. That like they see all kinds of men. For all kinds of.
I would have loved to be in the audience. Sorry.
This was a long time ago. This is a long time ago. But
wait, you've had sex workers here.
We've had multiple sex workers here.
Yeah. Oh yeah, this is when the panels were really.
What I'm
really
yeah, Joe knows. Yeah.
What I'm saying is like maybe you pay for sex for like a one-time experience just to see what it would be like to pay for sex, right? Like I'm not gonna be against those type of men and call them socially inept. What I'm talking about is like the regular, like in order for them to even have sex, they have to pay for sex. Those are the type of men that I'm talking about.
Okay,
if you have to do
it, then maybe if you're going to like narrowly divide their, okay, fair enough, right?
Yeah.
But just to say that like the spectrum of people who see sex workers aren't simply people who are inept in social situations, right? Like
Maybe they save
go
time.
into
Maybe
like they see men of like every different socioeconomic stratum, right? And they see guys of who are different relationship status. Like they could be married. In fact, lots of customers are married. That's it. Like, so to say
what?
that is different.
What? Prime? I have a question. You're telling me, like, obviously, what I'm trying to say is, if maybe you don't want to waste the time to riz a woman up, right? Maybe I can see, like, maybe if you lost your touch, maybe if you're too old, right? But if you're well in your prime age of like mid, late, early 20s, and you can go to the club or you can go on Tinder, I generally don't see why you would pay hundreds of dollars for sex where you could get it for free or at least way cheaper.
Tell you why, because if you actually, because a lot of men think they have money, but they really don't. If you actually have money, why waste your time and go to
Yeah,
the
it's worth
club
more than your time.
when you can
I mean, less than your
literally
time.
hold on, when you can literally pay for the exact kind of woman you want. Like you're like, this is the exact skin tone, hair, body, lips, etc. And because I'm paying her for her time, she can have the exact type of sex with me that I want to have.
I
I don't
think
get
there's
to
a,
do that with a woman in the club. I can't just be like,
I think there's a
I
sense of
need you to
pride
pick you up and I want anal. And so we
Mhm.
doing that tonight.
because
Like, why waste your time? If you have the money, to you, it's like a $10
I'll tell
meal,
you,
right?
I'll tell you,
So I don't think your point like holds. Like if
I'll
you
tell you
really
why.
sources, that's why football players, rappers, these men that women are literally throwing themselves at will still go out and purchase like sex work because
Purchase.
Yep.
it's easier and
Yeah,
you get exactly what you
Yep.
want. Like why wouldn't you?
I get that, but for me, um, I don't. For me, when I pay somebody to have sex with me, to me it seems like they're not in. Like for me, I get aroused from when somebody actually enthusiastically prefers me the same way I prefer them. So when I pay for sex, it's kind of like this is their obligation rather than this is something that they personally want to do
You're
with
talking
me.
about your personal experience. We're not
Yeah,
talking about what you
yeah.
specifically would want. We're saying in general that this is
Which
what they do. This is what
Mm.
is known in the world. You keep trying to say, well, my personal experience or what I do or what I like or what would make sense to me or what I would prefer. And what we're saying is that men in general, I made a general statement about what high value men do, about the reality of the world, and that high value men still have to work for it. No matter what, even if you want to talk about attractive, high value men, attractive, high earning men, they still have to work for it because the women that they would actually want, a lot of times, are actually going to still be pretty reserved when it comes to it. They won't just give it up. The younger you are, then yeah, the more likely that they are to be in that type of scenario. When you're 20s and you're going to clubs and you're sitting there and you're in college and all of that nonsense, yeah, women are floozies and they're just kind of out there acting stupid and doing whatever the freak they want to do. And then they get older and then they get to this point where they start feeling like, dang, I don't want my body count to get too crazy, or
yeah, I
dang,
get
now there's
that.
going to be ramifications, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then you'll find that there is a work that still has to be put in for those people. That's just the way it is.
I get that.
What up, Joe?
I wasn't necessarily refuting like what actually does happen. I was more so targeting like the motivation behind why. And what I'm saying is, if somebody did have what the values that I did, it wouldn't make sense for them to do. But you're essentially saying they don't have those values, which is
Right.
fine. Like, let's just
Yeah,
move on.
yeah. If someone was
Go ahead, Joe.
yes, indeed. Joe Lewis, please.
Oh man, this might be a natural segue into the main thing. But something that comes to mind to me when I hear the idea of high value men, and even when I think back to some of the many most famous icons in Black American history, like I can't even say that without laughing. When I think of people like Kevin Samuels, right? And how he is trying to convey his ideas and stuff, something that I would say is correct about is if you're that down bad for the patriarchy, you're going to have to reimagine who you are to the best of your ability to fit within that. And there's
True.
certain obligations and roles and expectations that a man has within that. And then if you are somebody who's on the outside of that in whatever capacity, then I understand the argumentation of there's certain things that you have to do to be a high value man. But I am not quite convinced that women, by and large, want the things that men are trying to set the narrative to being the things that are like desirable, if that makes sense. And there's that like there's friction. I think generally speaking, women want somebody who provides for them, but providing is going to be contextual with your partner if you're trying to co-determine each other's domestic life.
Yeah.
I think the trap is if you are going to, I'm just going to speak on for the Negroes of the world. If you are if you're a black man, for example, and you're trying to fit into the patriarchal structure, I I I don't see a lot of conclusions that doesn't lead to white women. But
Oh, that's where you're going. I was not
like,
expecting that turn.
well, no, because it's like I don't because there's too many. I think there's too many exceptions in the
Oh
identity
wait,
of
I
black
understand
men
what
and
you're just saying
women.
now. I actually do. It actually
Yeah,
was,
like I think,
but it was further down the. I get it. What you're
yeah, I think there's too many exceptions in the way that black men and women predominantly live their lives. Where like if you're trying to fit directly into what the patriarchy is, then melanin's already a debuff. So it's like you're
Yeah.
already playing on a back foot there, and
What are you
then
meaning by patriarchy?
just the idea that we're in a like in America, generally speaking, we're in
The
a
man
social
leads
system
kind of thing.
where what's that?
I think you're talking about the
Let him.
men
He was literally
provide, the
just
man
describing
leads
what he
kind of
meant.
thing.
Let him finish what
Well, you know,
describing what he
like
meant.
when I think of patriarchy, I just think of the idea that in America, but like obviously it's gonna be contextual, but in America, predominantly speaking, men control a majority of the political power, the social power, and then the narratives within those two things. So you're not going to have women in a lot of cases like being able to articulate what they see as power. They're just going to have to sort of co-sign whatever men whoever is deemed to be the hierarchical, like the top of the line, like determined to be, and it trickles down. So
I'm not sure if I agree with that. The reason why is because
Can I make my comment that I had for phonetic as well if Joe is done? It's
yeah,
not it's off it's I'm moving a little it's kind of related actually.
oh
sure, yeah,
okay.
no, you can go for it.
I
My
want to
my
go
my
back to
plane takes a
phonetic
while.
calling women whores and talking
I
about
didn't say whores.
and talking about promiscuity and you said that it's because when a woman is being promiscuous and having sex with different people, then it like the reason why it's judged more is because she's seen as easy, right? Like sex is something that typically women control and etc. I think you're correct, partly because I think it's based on how men think about sex. Men don't see sex as something they have with women, they see it as something they do to women, right? So if you have, I mean, yeah,
I,
that's
I think
kind
some
of
people
what
do that, but I don't think
that,
that's like the.
that's
Well, let her finish, and then we can contest.
most men. So if you feel like you are not part of most, okay, but I will always in conversations say most men because I think it's like
I
95%
hear
the
you.
majority, right? So it's kind of like you have let me do, you're easy. You've let us do this thing to you, right? Like we've smashed, we've hit, and etc. Men don't see women as like equal partners and people that they are having a sexual experience with that can be fulfilling for both parties and thus, have an understanding of why a woman like might want to engage in sex, with as many the same number of people that a man might, right? If they weren't, socialized to not do that, and if they didn't understand the judgment they were going to receive. So I actually don't necessarily think it's that you're incorrect. The part that I think that's missing there is it's also rooted in patriarchy, right? Like sex is not something women are judged for having sex because sex is something that's supposed to be done to women, and you're supposed to like limit the number of people who do this thing to you, as opposed to like it being an experience that two people are sharing. I think the way that a lot of most men view sex is kind of like fucked up.
I I don't think so. Look, I think the real reason is because the ramifications for sex are significantly higher for women, right? Like they are, um, and
In what sense?
well,
Pregnancy.
pregnancy, like back in the
Well,
day and stuff.
pregnancy it's a higher risk because you don't have access to abortions because that is
Wait,
controlled
hold
by
on.
police,
That's a wait.
controlled
That's a
by
rabbit
men,
hole. That's a
like
rabbit hole.
patriarchy. But it's not though,
No,
right?
it
Because it
is because
doesn't have to
no.
be
I'm sorry. You're going down a rabbit hole because I wasn't talking about abortions or any of those things. What I was talking about was the fact that
You said it's more
historically,
consequential for women. I said why? Why would sex be more consequential for women?
well, specifically because of the fact that pregnancy was a huge thing, and like pregnancy has like a great impact, and for a lot of men, I'm talking about historically, by the way. Historically, pregnancy had a greater impact because men were significantly less likely to end up wanting to be with a person who already had a child. And there weren't the child support laws and things like that in order to force a man to take care of like his children that he produced. And so women who ended up having children in those types of scenarios could end up being like destitute. It was like it could be a very disastrous thing and a heavy impact on them, their future, their parents, their family and their children. So because of that, that was one reason why we sex was something that was to be guarded. Furthermore, just in general, I think men significantly. I think a lot of it is rooted in male insecurity, but I think men always wanted a woman that didn't have a whole bunch of sexual partners, because of their own insecurity about their own performances and the beliefs in chastity and all that nonsense. So because of that, um, you know, that's why it was always that way. That in order for a woman to secure a good dowry and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, she needed to have been like, in some religions, like in Muslim places and Jews and stuff like that, she needed to have been literally untouched. So because of that, society formed around those norms, around the idea that, hey, a woman shouldn't be incredibly promiscuous, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so that stuff like created like it starts basically building on itself, where now, like, we've already known that it's like supposed to be a thing that's supposed to be rare, it's supposed to be guarded, and so on and so forth. And so then as a result of this, now society like puts the impetus and the onus on the man in order to be the one to approach, on the man to be the one that tries to that it's a that it again, it's a conquest, because if it's something to be guarded and a man is able to get that thing that is supposed to be guarded because of all of the societal implications and the long-term ramifications, then at that point, for a man to succeed in overcoming the barriers that would have been placed by that woman, it would obviously be a challenge and therefore a conquest. So again, I
No,
okay.
not at all. So
Hold on.
you,
I'm sorry. Wait, hold on. I just want to make sure
yes.
that I'm crystal clear here. Everything
Uh-huh.
that I said there, I was trying to like root it in facts. So you're saying no, and I think it's because probably you just want to have a different opinion. If you disagree with any of the facts that I said, please point out to me which specific fact that I stated was wrong, and then go on to make the rest of your point, please. If you don't do that, I'm going to assume that you don't actually have a disagreement with the facts that I
Mhm.
stated, but you just have a different opinion about the
I'm
way things should be.
I'm so glad you talk about facts because I specialize in those. So let's start at the very beginning. So first actually we could start at the end. You talked about how it's because there are these norms around women's sexuality and purity and how it's tied to like dowries and like women essentially had to be seen as these like pure creatures in order for them to be eligible for marriage, right?
I said that's what it used to be.
That's what it used to be. Gotcha.
Hmm.
So tell me why marriage was so important for women. So
Oh,
like
sure.
families will say, I have a daughter. We have to keep her pure, right? Because we need to make sure that she marries because what?
For several reasons. One,
Mhm.
obviously, a high value woman, in that scenario would end up securing a much greater dowry. And a lot of times marriages were used for economic purposes to tie together different families and things like that. So then you could see, oh, if this person has this resource and I have this resource, our combined resources should end up generating a lot of wealth for us as families. And so there was all of these types of arrangements and things like that. She literally, a lot of it was tied to her specific value, because a suitor was more likely to want to approach a woman who had a lower body, who didn't have any previous people, and things like that. So that was like a
I
pretty
want you to
highly regarded
explain
thing
to
by
me,
men.
why would a woman need a suitor? Like, what was happening at that time that when you had a female child, you spent her entire lifetime guarding her so she would be prepared? Like,
She's trying to say women didn't have rights because of the patriarchy. So that's
I
no,
why
no,
already
I'm
they
not
need.
said
even
that.
saying women didn't have rights. They had rights, but like what you're
Or
essentially saying is women's economic survival was dependent on their perceived sexual purity. Right. So it's
Sure.
interesting for you to ask a question to Joe, like, what do you mean by patriarchy? Right. And he breaks it down for you. Like, it's the political, economic,
No.
social.
I'm sorry. You misunderstood me. I wasn't asking
I
Joe
didn't, and
because I
I'm
didn't
being so
believe in the
clear.
patriarchy. I was asking him to clarify just his specific application there as it
Right.
pertained to the conversation. I
So
obviously understand what the
going back
patriarchy
to,
is and believe what the patriarchy is. I'm sorry. You misunderstood. You're assuming something about me that you're just wrong about. No one here thinks that I don't believe in the patriarchy. That's just you.
did I say you didn't believe it in, or I said, is that you then asked Joe to like clarify? But so let's
Clarify
continue
what
on.
he meant. Yeah.
That's great, but usually patriarchy has like a working definition, right?
It
So, but
varies
we
from
don't.
person to person, whether you're a womanist, whether you're a feminist, and it's literally, it can be morphed and challenged into different spheres. Please stop. Come on.
Well,
I just asked for
Um,
clarification.
Wait. I wanted
Quite,
to speak on this.
quite
hold on.
literally,
Yeah,
let me
next,
For the
but
explain.
jury.
Let her finish her
finish.
point.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Quite literally, no. There's a working definition of patriarchy. Just like no, that's
Yeah, there's
not how.
multiple working
I
definitions.
know
There are
we all.
multiple. If I can Google it right now, there are multiple working definitions
Well, hold
depending
on.
on which
I
area
think
you're looking at. You're just wrong.
I
That's
think
just how
it's
definitions
Never
work.
challenge. Listen, Zimmy, you're new here. Never challenge me on vocabulary. I'm always right on that. I'm
boy.
extremely particular about my words. I am right.
I,
There are multiple working definitions for patriarchy, and it depends on the lens that you're looking at and the sphere that you're looking in. You're just
Zimmy,
wrong.
can I clarify?
Wait. I wanted to talk about it.
No,
Oh,
look,
I
can
was
she
Yeah,
finish
gonna
her
no,
go
I'm
point?
just
after.
saying,
Yeah,
like, I want to
Oh,
talk about
Zimi, you're muted.
No.
Oh.
So, sorry.
Jimmy.
Just guys, just so you know, when Zimmy begins talking and for a microphone, it like will cut out when we're
Sure.
talking over her, right? So just be aware of that. So we should give a woman space to speak.
she
and
got
we
one of
won't
them
have that
woman
problem.
microphones.
Oh,
Y'all
She
sound
got a
like
wo- she got a specifically a female microphone.
it get quiet when a man's speaking.
I'm in the queue.
yes, my
I'm in the
female
queue after this.
it be triggering like triggered. So anyway, the original point that I was making was that this idea that women's value is tied to their sexual purity or ideas around their sexual purity was important because women's economic survival was tied to it, right? Even when you discuss like, oh, because of like religion. Again, let's think through the context of like historically why this idea of the purity of women was so important, right, during that time, right? And why you would need other institutions, such as the religious institution, to come in and then kind of double down on this idea of women's purity, right? Because it was tied to women. Women didn't have financial or economic options, right? We're living in a context where in the US, it was just in 1974 where a woman could open a credit card. So to discuss ideas around sex and how men think about sex and how they think about the women that they are having sex with and make it devoid of like this was always tied to women's economics survival. It was always tied to how women were viewed in religious contexts, etc. And why that leads to all of the judgment, right, that women experience around like their quote unquote sexual promiscuity. It's just like historically void, right? To make it seem like, oh
It's
no,
not.
we just I know, but I'm talking now.
Go ahead,
So
finish.
to make it seem like we just we because sex is so hard, it's so because women control it and we just value the women more who aren't having sex with a lot of different men. It's like, no, we've always used sex and women's sexuality and purity as a means of economic control. And really what's sickening to us is that in this day and age and in this generation, we're starting to lose some of that control, but we still have the ability to like use social judgment as a form of social sanction, right? We can't sanction women economically by not marrying them, by not giving them dowries, etc. We can't do that anymore in 2024. But what we still have is the ability to like socially sanction women. And all of this ties back to the idea that men do not see women as people that they are having sex with. They see women that they are doing sex to. And you lose value when you let all of these men do sex to you, right? Like, so that was my general point.
Okay, just to be clear, I never said any of this was
we're gonna
devoid.
hold on a second. We're gonna let Fanatic get his response in, but we do have to let other people in. Bam has been waiting for a long time. Then we'll go to Joe and Dream. Okay.
Wow.
Just
Dream
to be clear,
Dream can go before me.
Okay.
Just to be,
I gotta check my phone.
nigga, this is crazy. Just to be clear, I never ever said it was devoid. In fact, I tied it directly to it. I said historically it was based on the idea that women had dowries, and because of that, their dowries were going to be necessary in order for them, in order to be able to secure a dowry, they needed to appeal to the wishes of the suitor, and the suitor wanted somebody untouched. I'm not saying that I even agreed with that. I understand that that could have been oppressive at times, but never in any capacity did I ever say that it wasn't tied to historically the devaluing of all the other things. So it sounds to me like what's actually happening here is you already made an assumption because I asked Joe to clarify about what the patriarchy was that I didn't understand or believe in the historical patriarchy or the even present patriarchy. It sounds like that was one of your beliefs. And then because of that misconception, you then assigned a misjudgment onto why I was making the statements that I was making. I spoke about the history. The history was all of those things. And I also asked you, if you disagreed with any of the facts that I stated, to please state them, and you didn't mention a single fact that I stated that you disagreed to. You tried to expound more on those facts. I didn't go into a full-on exposition of every single one of my premises because I obviously recognized that I wanted other people to be able to speak. So I'm not going to go into literally every iota and every detail of every premise. What I did was gave the generality of the premise, which seems to coincide with what you were trying to elucidate. Yes, that it was tied to their economics, which is why I mentioned dowries. So obviously, and I also mentioned the fact that women, that they would be then a financial burden on their family, which would be economics. Talked about generating wealth from families. That's economics. Talking about the burden because there wasn't child support in order to help cover the expenses. That's economics. So again, we obviously understood of the financial and economic ties towards pregnancy. That was something. I'm sorry. I'm talking now. Wait. I'm talking now. Hey, I'm talking now. So obviously, it seems like what really happened was you just had a pre-examine. You had a misconception, and then went on to your talking point to explain about the financial impacts, even though I had already done so and clearly had already agreed with. Lastly, what I'm saying now, the reason why we still do this now, is not just because of the thing that you're saying, because we only view sex as something that we're doing to women, but what I also said, and it seems like you were missing it because you probably were still applying those same misconceptions, was that the social conditions from the past that existed at that time created social norms and social narratives which we still maintain to this day. So those social norms and social narratives don't necessarily apply because now we do have child support. Now there are ways that pregnancy aren't going to have the same exact impact and so on and so forth. So now the fact is the social norms, the social changes have the societal standards have maintained. So that's what it continues to exist to this day because it was just the norm before without the recognition that, hey, these same situations don't apply.
Okay, sorry. We have to move on. Hold on, sorry,
Zimmy, you keep unmuting yourself in here.
Zimmy, two things. One, we don't unmute yourself in stream. Right, we can hear you in Discord, so don't worry about unmuting yourself. And yeah, don't worry about that. But we gotta get some of these other guys in. But we will come back to you, Zimmy. So if you got something to respond to Fanatic, write it down so we can get it. All right.
Prime sounds and women again. Hate to see it.
So don't unmute this one.
Yeah.
Leave it.
Yeah, you're good.
So if I need to
if you need to mute, in the Discord. Mute.
Yeah, in Discord.
Got it.
Gotcha. All right, Bam, please.
I think that not even my main point, but just to basically that back and forth. I think both of the things y'all were saying were correct. I think it just depends on what period you're speaking to. I think that all of the things that Fanatic lined up are historically true, but I also think that Zimmy was going basically a step before that and saying why do we live in a world why those truths came to be. and it's probably because of just some and it's historical just devaluation of women. We say that like women are economic burdens because women aren't allowed to have jobs, because women shouldn't do these type of things, because like basically they push themselves into the patriarchy created the world and all of the descriptions of the things that you were naming. So I think it's kind of like one of those both.
But I didn't disagree with any of that.
Sure, but I wouldn't disagree with you. That's why I prefaced it with
That's
saying.
why I was saying, why was she acting like she was contesting me?
Because
that's
we
what
agreed.
you originally said at first. You said
kind of said major like this was the foundation of it.
No. Remember, his initial point was like, well, it's because women are the gatekeepers of sex, and so as men, we just don't value women who like you gave this whole explanation instead of just saying like we have set up as a social context historically where like women are judged for having sex. You made it seem like, oh no, because it's they gatekeep it and it's so challenging. Like my nigga, it wasn't that complicated. We have used sex as a way to like keep women oppressed, right? Because we tied it to like their economics. It didn't have anything to do with this like weird schema you set up about how like, well, see, if it's hard, look at it differently.
You just can't keep up. You can't keep up.
Of course.
Go ahead.
I know y'all love each other.
So
I know y'all love each other.
we'll go to Bam Dream. We'll go to Bam Dream, Joe, and then
they're not mutually exclusive. See me.
Not even a little bit. She just couldn't keep up.
Wait a minute. Okay, thanks. So moving past that, I kind of moving back to what Dream's original thing on like your concept of what a high value man does and his like pride and like willingness to pay for it. I think it's not even just the idea of paying for the type of sex, although that's an aspect of it. I think that these men pay for a silence that they can't otherwise guarantee for someone that they share like a fake interest in.
Exactly.
Like basically, if you go into the idea of like, oh, I'm going to romance you, I want these things with you, I want these truths. Now you got an idea of like maybe she gonna release something to the public, or maybe she gonna pull up at your baby mama house, and you're not trying to have that. So you just rather do a business transaction. You hit a point of money where you understand and like, oh, okay, like this is easy. I want to be really direct. These are the things I want from you. These are the things you want from me. And we can like make this a mutual relationship exchange. Like something I think about all the time is what it would feel like to hit like that ridiculous amount of wealth. Like, and I'm not talking about like $100,000, but like these like multi-millionaires,
100 millionaires.
What you don't even have to be that far. Like I feel like past like $10 million, nobody.
Dan, do you think you would pay for sex if you hit that amount of money?
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know. I really don't know. Yeah, I'm about to say from Chloe Bailey.
The fact that you don't know
specifically that there's no, you name your price, baby girl. But like I don't know about generally.
That's wifey though.
I'm probably a boring type of nigga that would just have like that just wants the wife, kids, family thing. But like I said, I don't have that type of.
You pre-order the Tesla truck is what you're saying.
Yeah, I might be like LeBron. I might give me a Savannah James. But
hey man,
but
we all need one of those.
But no, the only thing I was saying is like I'm sure that like once these men make like I said like $10 million plus, there's a certain type of man that has like all of this access and attraction from women like typically on a daily basis, but like they know it's 100% connected to their wealth. Like when I think about like Rick Ross lived like 25, 30 plus years of his life as, you know, the nigga that worked at the prison. The prison guard, and he knows what type of women he has access to. And then he gets a new level of money, and now it's like, oh, like I can get girls, I can do this, but you know it's just the money. You know if the money dries out, these people like they won't see you that way anymore, and not just the money, but like the fame and association that comes with that money. Like okay, their attraction to me is directly related to this, and if I didn't have this. Like I don't know. I just wonder what it would do. Yeah. I wonder if it would create a like imposter syndrome in yourself. On like, wow, like I know these people are like really into me, but it doesn't feel genuine. But the same happens to some women as well. It doesn't happen to most, but like I would say Glorilla is a recent example. I think Glorilla's a beautiful girl, but I can imagine now the type of men she's like that in her DMs probably wasn't the type of men that was in her DMs 2 years ago when she was, you know, the girl from Memphis, you know, twerking on the headlights, working at Popeyes. And it's just interesting to like I wonder what that feels like. Does it?
Yeah, I agree with you, Bam, especially on that scenario where like you got to future proof your relationship. Like that's why I always have constant conversations about like what happens if all of a sudden something happens, I'm not able to work, I'm not able to provide you the same life, whatever. Would you still want to be in this relationship? Like if marriage is through thick and thin, poor for richer, that's the type of marriage that I want. So that you have to have those conversations if that's what you want with somebody, to say like, oh, I would leave you if you couldn't provide me with hella money for the life that I want to live, or I'm not going to leave you, but maybe there's a time period where if it lasted long enough, then I would. So you have to have, like, I always recommend having these difficult conversations with your partner. I always do. That being said, I just wanted to make a quick analysis that just to potentially calm Zimi's mind, is that that's why I said potential.
English is his first language. Give him a break.
Yeah. Don't take it personally. Well,
I mean, it's a figure of speech. I'm not saying you're like irate or anything. I think you and Zimi, from what I've tracked in the conversation, Zimi, you didn't contrast anything Fanatic is saying. So what I think is happening is that you both literally agree, and your analysis is just expounding further on what Fanatic is saying. What I got what Fanatic said, even in his original point, is that this is the current concept that we operate under. And then he went to further explain, here's the background knowledge, some of it, not all the details, from which the current system that we operate under. And it's just downstream historically. And this is how it represents. And I see that myself as well, in the sense that there is this sense of scarcity or rarity with women and having sex with women, versus like, I feel like men just don't value it as much, in a sense that they're less hesitant to have sex, and women are more hesitant to have sex. And I think I've tried my best to try to bridge the divide. And there's two ways that you can stop this imbalance, is that either men have to be more selective or women have to be less selective. And so I think women want to have sex as much as men. And because of social no, okay. Well, I think
but most of the sex that you have with men is not. I mean, we don't want to go down that road of like why women are a little more like, is it worth it?
Well,
like,
maybe not casual sex, but in relationships, women turn on.
Yeah, my girlfriend always wants to have sex all the time.
No, I'm talking about casual. What
I'm talking about is just libido, like just libido in general, right? Women have the desire to have sex, I imagine, maybe even more, as at least as much, or even maybe even more than men. That being the case, there are women out there that, also, plenty of them would, in like the perfect world, would love to indulge in casual sex, right? But because of social pressures, they're not. And so I've tried my best in my life to where I've seen a woman be hesitant because she's like, oh, I don't want to have sex with you, Hatim, because I don't want to be called a whore. But I really do, like, I actually physically do have this attraction towards you, and I do want to have sex with you actually, but I'm hesitant to do so because I don't want to be called a whore. And so I've always been like, listen, let's be progressive. Let's be like future forward facing. Why do we care what other people think? We have to change the culture. If you believe like this, then the culture will never that's what I'm saying. Like, and so I'm doing my part in trying to change the narrative and saying, like, I'm not going to value you less because you had sex with me. Because women also have the fear of, Hatim, I think maybe you might leave. Like, maybe you want to hit and quit it. Like, and I said, why would I want to hit and quit it when I can hit and hit it?
This nigga's a genius, bro. This nigga's a genius, bro. I promise I'm using that next time I want. Next time I meet a girl and I'm trying to hit on the first night, maybe let's be progressive. Let's be progressive. I'm like, you letting the patriarchy control you.
That's what I said. Why would you want to listen to the sexist narrative? Like, are you liberal like I am? We're liberals, right? We're progressive. Like, try to the only way you can defeat the patriarchy, because you're talking about, oh, I hate the patriarchy, then why would you want to enforce it?
Someone,
Don't
I
tell me you
need
over there with the MAGA pussy.
Someone
You're
out
giving
there,
me
I need you to clip that. All right. That's like an
That's
example
golden.
of the legendary riz that my man Dream lays down, and
I'm using
I
that.
need to study that. I need to use that in my own life. Thank you so much, my man.
Next time a girl don't want to have sex with me, I'm calling her MAGA pussy. I'm saying MAGA pussy. I'm like, oh, you got that? That's that Trump. You buying it all, the patriarchy. I need some Kamala 2024. You know what I'm saying? I want a progressive woman. I can't be with you.
That was funny.
But genuinely,
That's
seriously, like, just if I could put a one-liner to it,
Okay.
it makes sense for women to really just stop caring about like the selectiveness, because eventually, when enough women stop caring, because I understand the historical harm, you didn't have financial like leverage. Now you do, at least in America. You were afraid of dangerous sexual practices. Now we have condoms and birth control, at least in some states, right? And so at least in these states where all these options are available, I would like to see, which I actually do already see it, right? But if the trend continues, I really do think the patriarchy around this selectiveness with women and having sex is going to shift. And I think it's already shifted already with the like sexual, I forgot there was a movement already, like sexual liberation movement. Yeah.
Let's
the slut walking. That's like gaslighting on premium. That's like 94 octane gaslight.
Let's let our friend Joe Lewison. He's been waiting.
Free the nipple. I'm also the free the nipple movement.
I bet you are. Yeah. Joe Lewis, please.
Wow, that was quite an adventure we had there.
That was amazing.
All right, so something that's knocking at this for me is the idea of like resisting patriarchy, right? And the idea like, well, how do we resist this thing? If this thing is so pervasive, how do we stop our men from being careless and our women being whores? Oh, and I think there's like some stuff to that. I think it just involves collaboration, to be honest. And I think that men have to give up more in collaboration than women, if I'm being kind of frank on it.
How so?
Where I don't think men do a good job at sharing their life and all the areas of activity of their life with their partners. And they leave certain aspects of that very maybe at neutral muted, and then at worst in a way that could put a woman in unironic danger. That could be something as simple as not understanding how your actions and the way that you move are causing your partner to not see themselves in you. That's something that like my girlfriend and I talk a lot about, where we're very like clear about, hey, if I'm doing something where I don't feel seen, tell me. And that's like basically a mutual agreement. And then even like in casual like interactions that we have with friends and family, we have like a code word that we use internally for that, where it's like if I'm doing something where she doesn't feel seen, she uses the code word. If she's doing something where I don't feel seen, I use the code word. And then we know that like, hey, after the fact of this, we'll like sort of like talk it out and try to understand what's going on with that. And I don't think a lot of men even think about that. And when it comes to sex, as an example, I don't think men think about that at all. The idea of like sex as a matter of emotional collaboration. I know that sounds really like hippy dippy proto feminist bullshit, but like for real, practically, if you're down bad for patriarchy and you have the money to be down bad for patriarchy, then of course you're going to want to buy sex, because then you set the terms of the contract. You don't have to worry about collaborating with a woman. You just like the collaboration is you are agreeing to these things. I'm paying you for these things, so do these things. Where in most casual sexual encounters, you gotta be like, "Oh, baby, hold my hair back when I do this," or touch me this way. Like you don't have to think about those things if you're throwing that much coin. And I don't think a lot of men are going to ever be in that position to even set those kind of terms. So it's like this weird contradiction where it's like, yeah, maybe there is not enough money where we can pay for pussy. And it's like, sure, but that's never going to, like, that's the 1% of the 1%. They're able to do that in a way, and the market's available to them in a way where they're able to do that. And then we're stuck with the well, if we can't pay for sex, what do we do? So we just make sure when we're having sex that we don't ever collaborate with the person that we're with. We just kind of go through however we're going through with it and being done with it. And I think to a degree, I say that to say that I think men know that. I think men know deep down inside that, like, hey, I don't really move in a way completely where I'm collaborating with women sexually. And then because
Mm.
of all the things that Fanatic described and the things that Zimmy described, that truth exists. So if I see a woman who has multiple partners, to Fanatic and Zimmy's point, that's pointing to a bunch of societal things that might make this person an improper partner long term. Again, I'm saying in the confines of being down bad for patriarchy, because
Mhm.
and there's not a lot of for instance, on the grounds of religious reasons. Like there are religions where women are in equal footing to men when it comes to collaborating in their domestic life. Some point to like Zainism, Buddhism, some manifestations of Hinduism. Like they have within the religious backing that they can, you're collaborating in your domestic life in a more equal footing, whether it be overt or like sort of just like socially reinforced. But Christianity doesn't do that. Catholicism doesn't do that. It's very clear about where the woman's role is. So if you are somebody who is of faith and you're looking to find a partner who sort of aligns with you of faith, your faith is going to determine what kind of partner you're looking for. And then if you don't have a religious footing, social footing, or what have you, that allows you to understand and want to collaborate with other people, I think you're just gonna kind of be a menace, um, because then you're gonna be met with a bunch of like patriarchy is gonna get throw a bunch of contradictions to your face about women, about what people, I don't want to say ought to be, what people are doing practically, and then you're never going to be honestly fully satisfied. I don't think patriarchy is a social system that's actually fully satisfying for people. I think it restricts more than it actually opens doors. And then again, like when you have different types of characteristics that already put you in contradiction to what patriarchy is trying to set, then you're running into a whole other mess of problems. Which is why, like, I unironically say, like, if you're a black man, dating white women is dating up. Period. Like, there's no world of where statistically it's gonna work. It's gonna work out against you. You're gonna have to find you're gonna have to go to the poorest of the poor whites to find some situation where you're not gonna have some type of inheritance or some type of political social benefit that lets you so that you have a house. Like, I see a lot of poor black folks getting married, but I see a lot of poor white folks too, and a lot of them have homes. And it's like, okay, why is it that patriarchy tells you certain ways of presenting yourself, certain ways of how to behave and how to interact, but then niggas are always on the bottom. But if you get a whole bunch of people who say hey, Negroes, if you do this, you're gonna get the rewards, and look at us, we're winning. And then you get people yeah, I see you winning. And then it's well, hold on, your road is not paved. There's grass exposed. There's trees in it. But I'm not going to tell you that because I'm going to show you the parts that are kind of smooth, the little bits, the part that hey, this part of the road is kept pretty well because the others isn't.
But I think that it's something that we all.
So quick response from you, and then we'll go to Zimmy, Fanatic, and Dream.
Yeah, I think that there's something that obviously men historically put this in place, but I think today I don't think it's something uniquely that men maintain more than uniquely men maintain. I think everyone just kind of is born into the world that exists, and we all kind of fall into the roles that we're taught and see throughout society. Because I used to think that oh, okay, most women are waking up and becoming more progressive and looking to be these standalone independent type of individuals. But I'm about to say you'll hear just as vocally from women the concept of oh, okay,
if not more.
I don't. We're gonna have competition. I'm just saying that it exists that of women saying that a man should lead, or when we do discuss the matters of sex, like men do say like, hey bro, she let me hit. I thought of that and immediately went like, yeah, men do like generally describe sex as something they're doing to women. But you also hear women, even amongst their friends, like, oh girl, you let him hit. Oh, it's about time, like blah blah blah. You don't went on 4 dates, you ain't
Then
gave
you
him
go
nothing.
give it up. Yeah.
Yeah, you ain't gave it up. So
Put out.
and I
Yeah.
don't think that like any of these things are like I don't think it's something that someone's really the average person has really thought deeply into, like, how do we get here? How do
No.
I maintain it? How do I break out of it? I think we all just exist as the cogs in the machine that we were born into.
To
Yeah,
respond to
none of us
that
fell out of a
really,
coconut
really
tree.
quick. Yeah. To respond to that. Yeah. To respond to that super quick. Yeah, I think that again, like I've I've changed a lot because I've read more in the past like 4 years of doing these panels and stuff. And I think something that's closer to the truth, the more I just like listen to how people react, listen to how people move, read a lot, watch a lot of people, is that we try our best to kind of like fit ourselves into the bits of society that we can tolerate. And then the things that like there's too much resistance to, we either discard it outright, try to challenge it, or be numb to it. I think in a lot of ways, I think it's very easy in society to kind of be numb to even the idea of the man being the primary caregiver, because it's like if I'm a black woman, statistically speaking, that pool is small as shit. Damn. So it's like if I'm trying to find a black man, it's like depending on where you live, depending on what your social circles are, you're at a significant disadvantage. And then it's like, oh girl, I just moved to Texas and found my husband. And it's like, that's cool. I can't do that. So like there's a bunch of contradictions within that. And then when you're met with enough contradictions, you might have people say, like, oh, like, I'll just date whoever I want, whatever. Like on the same aspect for men, where it's like, oh, I'll just date whoever I want. I want to date a black woman. There's no one in my social circles and other circles where there is a black woman. I see places where black women are. I don't have access to those places. So there's Rebecca. I've known Rebecca for 10 years. We're coworkers. We're desk mates, and her dad's rich. So
Yeah.
I might as well just go on that easy route. That's super hyperbolic, by the way, but
Let's go to Zimmy Fanatic Dream.
I think I mostly agree with you all. The two things I don't agree with. One, I think that because there's so much conversation around how Black men cannot win in a true, white supremacist patriarchal nation, I think that some men have used that as kind of like an out to do this thing of like patriarchy hurts us all. See, I'm not a part of it. I'm not, intentional about. And like, to me, I always think that people have an easier time understanding it when we switch it from gender to race. So, for instance, like for the examples that Bam gave, if we were to say, like, I've heard plenty of Black people say that people need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, right? That's like good old fashioned, like white, supremacy, like pretending like we're in a meritocracy, right? But you hear Black people saying that. But I wouldn't necessarily go as far as to say that white people are helping to maintain and uphold white supremacy, right? So I do think that there's a difference between being in a system and being a beneficiary of a system and actively working to maintain a system, right? There's one thing about like how you respond to it. Like, yes, have women responded out of survival, you know, with mimicking similar kind of like sexist, misogynistic talking points, right? As like historically men have engaged in. Yes, but women have never benefited from a patriarchal system, right? Especially not Black women, and women certainly don't work to actively work towards maintaining it because, like, if we're being real, women don't even possess the political or economic power to actively work towards, maintaining a patriarchal system. So I don't want to give men, Black men in particular, right, an out
Zimmy,
of saying like,
Zimmy, can I push
yeah,
back a little bit on that?
mate,
Benevolent sexism.
Yeah, because I I agree with a lot of what you said, right? I like how you broke it down to categorizations of how people work within the system, right? With that, some people just existing, some people benefiting, and then others actively maintaining it. I
Maintaining it.
agree with this, right? But like, I would say that like there are plenty of white women who work to advance patriarchy, right? That like they have a proximity to that power. And
Patriarchy or white supremacy?
well,
Patriarchy.
both. I would say both.
Can I, Prime, real fast,
hold on.
30
I
seconds.
think,
I promise you, Quest. I think it might help clarify. I promise.
okay.
Zimmy, where does, when it comes, because I agree with you too, by the way, when it comes to your ideas of structures, right? It's like structuring that there's people who exist within it, that there's people who actively benefit, and then there's just sort of like ancillary beneficiaries. Where, in your eyes, does intentionality come into play when we're talking about those type of actors?
I think intentionality comes into play when you're looking at people who are benefiting and people who, well, not even always benefiting, people who are definitely people who are intentionally working to
Actors.
maintain a system,
Yeah.
right? And you may not be conscious of the way you're working to maintain a system, but it doesn't mean that you're not working to maintain that system, right? Because
But if you're not
I
conscious, it's not
can
intentional.
actions and be like, bruh, I clearly see how this is going to maintain XYZ. You may not know it is, but like, yeah, so I think that is where I would draw. That's kind of where I would draw the line. Is like people who actively work to maintain systems. Intentionality, I think. Yeah, I would say
Is it,
matters.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
I'm so
about
sorry,
that?
Prime. Is it fair to say that we ought to pay attention to actors who do these things on purpose, more so than those who don't?
I think that's more than fair to say. And
Sure.
I would add that often, minus the bell hooks, love black men language, black men do actively work to maintain it. I know it's hard to hear, right? Because it's much easier to be like, oh, we're also aspiring to patriarchy, but we'll never meet it. And it actually really harms us too. But like, let's be clear, no one maintains a system that they don't benefit from in some way.
No
right?
one
Like,
maintains a system they
yeah.
don't benefit.
From in some way.
Okay, so going back to this, hold
They
on.
participate in it, but they don't work to maintain it unless they benefit.
No
I
one
guess
ben-
I guess this is my slight pushback against you, right? It's like so well, first of all, let's say, do you agree that white women work to maintain patriarchy and white supremacy, both of them, those systems?
I think it's complicated. I think white women definitely work to maintain white supremacy, and they have to attach themselves to a white patriarch for their survival and in order to maintain white supremacy. I don't think it's an either or.
Can I have a clarifying question?
No.
I just want to clarify a question.
Let me
Let him have a dialogue. He ain't said nothing.
Yeah, let me just work my way through this. No, not you. I was so I hear what you're saying. But like, so I'm reminded of, there was a really good video about if you could believe it, the Alabama sorority sister thing, like what was it called, rushing, yeah, the Bama rushing, yeah, right,
Bama rush, yeah.
And they talked about in Bama Rush, in case you don't know, right? So a bunch of sorority women, right? Sorority age women are rushing to get inside of a sorority, right? And these are prestigious sororities, and most of them historically white, and try to maintain
Rushing
that.
means join, by the way, for those who don't know.
To join.
I saw the HBO documentary thing on it.
Yeah. I didn't see that one, but
audience.
I've seen lots of I've seen lots of stuff on YouTube. In any case, right? Well, I there were some interesting breakdowns of that, and like how that maintained like a system of patriarchy where like these women, yeah, sure, they went to college, right, to get an education. But the point was to get into these sororities because then they would have access to men in fraternities who were destined to be, senators and CEOs and all that, right? So the point was to attach yourself to a man there, right? Now, you can say that, they benefit from these and they maintain it, right? Like they want this system that's benefited them for literally generations, right? So I would say that person upholds that system. I like what you said that people who don't get a benefit from a system don't work to maintain it.
But that begs the question.
I sort of like it, right? I
That's
do have some
begging the
experience with
question,
it.
though.
That's fine. But without going down too many rabbit holes, because there's so many things I'd like to say about this. For Black women, like I've seen them do similar things, right? That I think within the Black community we emulate a lot of the things that we see in the dominant white culture, right? We
Oh, yeah.
emulate forms of masculinity, right? This is how you're supposed to be a man, and this is how you're supposed to be a woman. And especially for those who have access to more wealth, right? Not exclusively so, but especially those with access to more wealth. There are plenty of situations where the patriarchy ends up, benefiting them, right? And so they do. I see them work to maintain these things, right? This respectability politics. This is how we need to be so that we integrate into the larger society. So, like, that's my pushback against you. Yeah.
Are they
Yeah, Candace
working?
Owens.
I guess my pushback. Oh, go ahead, Bam.
No, I was just gonna say, I think like when you said that like people who don't benefit don't actively seek to like maintain. I immediately went to Candace Owens. I think Candace Owens actively seeks to maintain white supremacy, and I think as a Black woman, I don't think that she's necessarily a beneficiary from it outside of her white spouse, which she didn't have.
Yeah.
But that's a big benefit, right? That's a big benefit.
She got the white spouse after the fact though. She was already doing this, and then they like like you want a white man. That was like her reward at the end.
Yeah, but remember, it's like white patriarchy, white supremacy, patriarchy, capitalist, right? So like Candace Owens is also a capitalist.
Just buzzword.
I mean,
Like
Well, no,
real
like,
world,
she's,
real world.
like-
But to go back to your point, Prime, I would say I would push back and say like, how do we draw? And I guess this is Joe's question as well. How do you draw a distinction between those working to maintain a system and those working to survive in the system?
So that was going to be one of my clarifying question, which was specifically, how do you know somebody is upholding the system intentionally or actively? Because for what I can imagine is that a woman that's saying, "Hey, you be the man of the house. I don't want to work. I want a soft life. I want to stay at home. I this is what I want to do, and you make all the money and let me reap the benefits of your economic endeavors, while I can I have a soft life, go on trips, stuff like that, and work off the back." Like, I imagine a woman that's promoting this lifestyle is somebody that's promoting patriarchy.
No.
Why not?
Oh,
Go ahead, Joe.
Not to dive too into it, because the reason why I ask that is because that's something I don't say that I struggle with, but is definitely something it's really hard to parse out. I'll give like a personal example. I never had problems, again, as Bam revealed, that toxic piece of shit. Man, dogs belong in kennels. That I'm adopted, right? So like my dating pool and how I dated was very different insofar as I vividly remember that my mom never had any problems if I brought a white woman home.
Is your mother white? Your mother and father are white?
Whole family.
Intriguing.
Yes, it's rough. So when I brought a white woman home, there were no like outwardly issues. I knew something was funny because there's like a few like flashpoints. I had a friend who I played competitive Yu-Gi-Oh with. She was very, very good. We were playtest partners, and we were preparing for a regional. And long story short, like when you basically cram testing for like days before that. And I wanted to stay over, and basically she lived on the other side of Jersey. She was closer to the regional than I was.
Can we get to the meat, Joe, please?
Yeah. So,
he built it up. Let the man get his
I'm building up to contextualize it in context of what we were doing, was playing card games. So I explained to my mom, like, look, we're going to play test tonight, and then we're just going to drive up tomorrow. And then my mom was like, I don't feel comfortable with you like staying over at her house. And I'm like,
is she Black?
What?
I'm confused.
Yep.
Oh, she's Black. Okay.
So and then I was like, okay, are you comfortable with her staying over here instead? And then she was like, yeah, I'm totally fine with that. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So when she finally came over, my mom made it basically beeline explicitly clear where she could be in and around the house, where she was sleeping, and then also like what parts of the house were off limits. And she made it explicitly clear. Fast forward to prom, my mother had no problem with my prom date sleeping in the same bed as me. Had no problem. Where it was
there a
just
crazy age difference?
no, but like the same age, same age group for both.
No, not difference between the two of you guys. Were you older by the time you had the prom date?
No, same year.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, so it's like
Your mom said that black bedwench ain't gonna crap my
Yo, please, can you just connect the dots?
I mean, I think he's connecting the dots. I think that was it.
No. Because what I was asking was, how is somebody promoting that's what I'm understanding to be very patriarchal norms, such as the man goes to work and I'm gonna want to have the soft life. I want you to make hundreds of $1,000s so I can stay at home, watch soap operas, and hang out with my girlfriends.
There it is right there. There it is right there. First of all, domestic labor is labor.
Hold on. What do you mean there it is right there?
So you saying how is it not patriarchal for a woman to be like, I want the soft life, I want to stay home and watch TV, and the man be like, I go to work and make money? You're disconnected from the fact that like domestic labor is a type of labor.
Wait,
right?
That's a non sequitur, Zimi.
Okay, go ahead. My bad. Maybe I misunderstood.
Yeah,
I don't want
because even my response to that statement that you just made is that, would you say that a man demanding that his partner is a stay-at-home mom and doesn't go to work, even though she might want to, right? Would you say that that's patriarchal?
Yeah, because if
somebody promoting the lifestyle of the woman staying at home is patriarchal, I would imagine a man doing it is the same way that a woman advocated for that same lifestyle doing it.
Because y'all disagreed on two different things right there. She was saying, like, and I don't think you mean this, Dream, but you were describing the idea of a woman staying home is watching soap operas, going on trips, and watching.
No, I'm saying here's an example. Yeah. Here's an example of here's a specific example that if a woman, I'm giving the most egregious case just to make it abundantly clear that we agree that this is what we would think patriarchal norm is. Right,
but you wouldn't apply that to like the general idea of a mother who wants to be stay at home or a parent that wants to be stay at home. You're just saying this is like one.
No. I wasn't talking about generalities at all. I was talking about very specific situation. I didn't say anything about general. I'm saying if somebody does X, are they classified as Y? So if somebody the problem advocate for these type of rules and systems to be in their household,
got it.
Right.
So you have
just explain to me why it wouldn't be patriarchal.
There's another level of interrogation that you have to have when you're trying to determine if these things are X or Y. So it's like just because something looks like X and leads to Y, or something that I would rather the other way around, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are actively contributing to a thing. So like there's a bit more.
But this person is actively advocating for it verbatim, verbally, and through their actions. This is something that they're saying. Like, they're preaching out on a soapbox saying this is the lifestyle that I want.
Dream. Actions are not divorced from the person. So
what does that got to do with anything I said?
Because people make actions that are influenced by everything prior to that and what's currently in front of them.
Duh.
So two people might be doing the exact same thing and coming to the exact same conclusion with a totally different level of analysis to reach.
Sure, they could have different reasons for advocating the same thing, but if they're advocating for that same thing being the patriarchal norms, just because they have different reasons to come to that conclusion doesn't mean that it's not that conclusion.
Yeah, Dream's talking about basically like the example he's basically saying is if there's a specific type of woman that says that she wants like basically this royal princess treatment, like I want a man that has a lot of money. I don't really want to do domestic labor. I just want him to like pamper me like that, and that's the type of life that she advocates for.
That's what the soft life is. That's like a specific term.
Okay.
Yeah, but basically, and like it's niche, but that's like that type of thing. He's saying would that person in particular be a woman that's advocating for the patriarchy? Because you were saying that like a woman wouldn't necessarily
No, I
advocate
think that's a woman who's figured out that like that's the ultimate, like, well, maybe for her, but like that's her form of the ultimate way of survival, right?
Wait,
We
wait,
Dream,
wait.
Dream, let me
let's
give you.
No, no, no,
I
no,
can
no.
give you a
Before
clear
you jump in,
hypothetical.
Just lay it out.
wait,
Hold on. Let me add a qualifier. Can I add a qualifier so it'd be explicit?
Hold it. Let me finish the sentence that she was making, and then I want, because I want to hear what she has to say. Then we can work off that. I actually have a lot to say on this specific issue. I think it's really
Probably need
interesting.
to
But
jump into the topic soon. But yeah,
What if,
yeah, Zimmy.
basically, just real quick, just three words. What if the woman also says that an attachment to those
Three.
desires, that if a man couldn't provide this lifestyle for her, then they're not a real man.
you getting an F in math.
Okay, so the first part, the first part of that, I would say that that's someone choosing one mean of survival, right? Because the reality is we live in a society, I'm talking about in the US specifically, right? Because I don't know all the numbers for like other parts of the world, but in the US, it's only in the age group of those under 30 where women are finally starting to out earn men. Right. We're just now seeing that with like, what is that, Gen Z? I don't even know if you're under 30. Are you still a millennial? Like, that's Gen Z, right?
Mhm.
So women's economic survival, right, has literally, like, earlier I mentioned, like, women can have credit cards until 1974. You wasn't signing no mortgage. You weren't doing anything, right? So women have had to figure out ways to survive in a patriarchal system. For some women, that looks like I'm going to become highly educated. I'm going to become a high earner. I'm going to do X, Y, Z. For other women, that looks like I am a really attractive woman. I am confident in my sexuality. And so I'm going to go on the sexual marketplace and exchange sex for money. For some women, that looks like I'm going to attach myself to a man who's going to be wealthy, powerful, or at least just have more money than me, right? These are all forms of survival, right? So I don't see that as the same thing as like, and also this is the point I originally wanted to say. When we talk about like patriarchy, I want us to like remove it. It's not always in like the romantic sphere, right? Because people always go to the like, who's gonna pay for the date, stay at home moms, and it's like these are like way bigger systems, right? And things at play than just like what happens in the romantic and domestic sphere, right? But oftentimes, like what we're seeing is like women have always had to figure out ways to attach themselves to men for their economic survival. We've literally had policies in this country, right, that benefit married couples, right? That, you know, that for a number of years, like this is the system that has been set up. Like women's economic survival was tied to men. So I don't think you can then turn around and be like, can you believe a woman wants to attach herself to a man for her survival? Yes.
But it's not,
But
it's not necessary, though. That's the problem.
okay. So I have a similar. I think I have a similar issue to Zimi's response that you do, Dream. So let me try it in a different way. So I've thought about this particular issue a lot. I've been fascinated. It's in like the YouTube space. This whole like dark feminine trend. Right? I've talked about this like a bunch to people.
What is that?
Oh, oh my God! Oh, there's a lot there. When you're done
Say it
here,
again, dark feminine trends.
yeah, it's called just like dark feminine. All right, dark femininity. All right.
Okay.
Go on YouTube after when you're done here and like see what you find. But a lot of like what these creators are doing, they're talking about like how can you channel your femininity to basically
I
summon.
think it's Sprinkle Girl.
I don't know who that is. I'm sorry. To
Take that, girl.
summon a rich man, right? Sometimes they tie this to like spirituality. I've seen that, or others are like are doing some sort of hard calculation. But like you're channeling your feminine energy to summon basically a rich man into your life. And this is a really like it's a big trend. There's a lot of money in terms of this. These creators, they sell classes about it. Like, okay, if you follow this in the steps, right? What this seems to be is like a response to Red Pill, right? Talking about like high value men, and like and like you need a certain type of woman. Well, on the other end, right, this is kind of the mirror image of it. It's like, okay, well, these men are saying this is what a high value man is, and this is what they consider a high value woman. So why don't we wrap ourselves around that, right, and become these high value women, right? So like I
Mhm.
so I would separate this into two tiers though, right? So like there are the creators who are actively like making money off of this, right? It's like selling courses saying I can teach you how to make this happen, right? Selling a lifestyle, the whole Instagram thing, right? You see me on jets and all that, right? But then there's the women who are actually engaging with this content. And I see it literally in their comment sections. I see women talking about like I've been praying, I've been praying for like this type of man to show up because it's been so hard, right?
Mhm.
I'm just trying to survive, right? Holding on to my fingernails. Everything is, so hard for me. Um, and so for those women in the comment sections, yes, I would say they're surviving within this system. But for the women who are actively advocating it for it, actively trying to get people to believe like this is how this is how a woman should be, right? Uh, I'd say they're maintaining it. I think like at that level of intentionality, especially if it becomes your livelihood, I think it'd be fair to say that. And some of these women are black, right?
Right,
So
right.
yeah, that they at the very least would be maintaining this. Would you disagree?
I can totally
Maintaining
see
the
capitalism.
system of patriarchy, one in which men hold the economic, political, and social power. You think these women who are selling courses on like how to be live your most demure life.
Well,
I
they're at least
I want us
promoting
to
it,
move.
right?
Hold on, real
I
quick. That's
think
why I
that's
said
what
I
he's
want us
saying.
to move. I want us to move out of
Mm.
the like romantic, like when people start talking about who pays for a date and like let's really a system. Uh, p-
Well,
Sexism and patriarchy predate racism and anti-blackness.
I
You
hear
think that
you.
these like how to freshen your pussy courses are maintaining a
I hear
system?
no, I hear you.
We're
I hear you
trying
on
we're
that.
trying to figure out
I
we're trying to figure out if we can agree on what categories are, right? So
yeah.
there's a broad
Hold on, hold on,
category,
hold on, hold
and
on,
we're
hold on.
giving you a
Let
specific
me let me
scenario
let me
within this
let me finish
category,
what I was
and
gonna
we're
say,
asking
please.
you to be like,
Oh yeah,
hey,
hey,
I
let me
understand that
finish
this
what
fits
I'm.
under that
Oh boy,
category.
hold on. I'm gonna finish what I'm gonna say. Please, holy fuck. Please, thank you. I got it. Thank you.
What the hell is
So
happening?
like I hear what you're trying to say. Patriarchy is so much bigger than this, right? But like there's it's weird that you're making this distinction though, because yes, societal systems are huge, but very few of us can ever touch like all the societal system unless you're the fucking president, right? Or CEOs, right? There's very little that like a Fortune 500 company, there's very little of society that you get to touch. True, you can say that these people are more responsible for maintaining the system, but that doesn't mean there aren't levels to this, right? And if you are saying to women, this is how you should be, this is how you make it in life, right? Then it's a small part, but like that small part, like without these people below actively maintaining the system, actively promoting the system, I think the system falls apart, right? And this comes from multiple angles. This comes from faith leaders, this comes from our school, how we like socialize children. All these things are tiny parts of the
Okay.
system, but without that, right, it starts to crumble. So yes, freshening up your pussy isn't a critical
What?
part of it. I agree, right? That
Where's
doesn't
that
mean that
from?
they're not helping maintain it.
Yeah, I
No.
think
Oh, go ahead.
just really quickly, and then you go right after me. I think a huge part of the system is the culture, and so there are a bunch of women that uphold the culture willingly, and what I mean by willingly is that they see that they benefit from it in some way, and so they understand that there's some shortcomings from the patriarchy that they may receive, but then they're evaluating, doing the pros and cons and the cost benefit analysis, saying I may I may be like subjected and like negatively in a few ways, but then I value not being required to work, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm like, fine, I'll do the role, and I'd advocate for the role because this is the world that I want to see, where I don't necessarily want to work because I hate work. Work sucks. I'm not the type of person that wants to work, and so there are women that are like that, and I would imagine that any person, man, woman, whoever, that advocates for women must behave and act like this. Men must behave and act like this in order for them to be considered men, in order for them to be considered women. I would imagine that anyone that does that and does it in the traditional sense, right? Meaning like that's aligned with the traditional patriarchal norms of whatever you want to call it, how one man and woman should act. Anyone that's advocating for those norms, I would imagine, is upholding, promoting, advocating for the maintainment or the sustaining of the patriarchy. I can't imagine.
Is the right word. Yeah.
Right. When you promote something, you're advocating for the sustaining of it.
What
If it's
exactly is
already
the
occurring.
promotion to it then? If we're trying to be clear here, like how,
Huh?
like what does promotion require for you?
Promotion requires advocacy. So when you advocate for something, you're promoting it. For example,
how is advocacy promotion?
Like for example, I'm an advocate for Vote 16, which is a legislation in San Francisco that allows 16-year-olds to vote, 16 and to lower the minimum voting age, which means that I'm promoting that this is a good thing. This is what ought to be done, right? This is a standard that I believe everyone should uphold to. And so when you advocate for something, you're promoting it as a standard that people should uphold to and follow.
The only reason I should say promotion is the right word is I think it moves past the place we were getting hung up on, and is like, are they actively maintaining it? Like, because that speaks to a level of power that I don't know if anybody didn't necessarily have to get into. But the idea of like, oh, okay, these people are at least promoting it.
You guys are thinking too high level, too hot heady.
No, I'm saying I'm agreeing with you. I'm just saying that I'm just using a word to get past a lot of this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And like, because the thing is, people can do a bunch of things in their domestic life and again, like, since we're going to have to eventually segue to this Darth Vader nonsense.
Why black women do the way they do.
like
that white women love it.
Yeah, white women, I know. Oh, brother. There's definitely ways that people can be contributing to a system without them overtly knowing how they are contributing to said system. And the thing that I was trying to parse out earlier was that we ought to pay attention to those people who do these things on purpose and overtly on purpose. Like, I think you can still generally parse out overtness in any system. And I think the problem is, in a lot of cases, like patriarchy, no different than racism, white supremacy, are met with a bunch of contradictions. And I think a problem that you have to a certain degree, Dream, is that you presuppose in your argumentation that these systems are logical. Do you believe that the patriarchy is a logical system?
What do you mean by logical? Like, there's so many definitions. How are you using the word logical? Because logical can
when
mean
I say logical,
possible.
what do you hear when I say logical?
That you mean that it makes sense, potentially, right?
Okay.
And then what makes sense for an individual can be different than one another. So that's why I mean, how are you using the term?
Okay, so then when I say, do you believe patriarchy is logical, based on how you understand the word logical for yourself, is that a true statement?
There's a difference between, do I personally believe it's logical versus can it be logical? And I think it can be logical in the way that you're using it, right? But I here, let me just be clear, because I know there's some confusion. I believe that there are toxic, unhealthy ways that you can have patriarchy, and I think there are healthy ways that you can have patriarchy. And I think that a lot of the times,
definition of patriarchy is, just so I have a clear understanding.
Right, and so
now you're asking for a definition. Isn't that crazy?
You waited all that time.
So the way that
I didn't wait all that time. You waited all this time to finally learn exactly what the freak I did earlier. Probably you don't recognize.
Please,
so what the way I'm using patriarchy right now is that where a man has may have like dominant power, right? And I'm saying that it's possible to have a world where men,
power in terms of what?
In whatever context that you want to put. So it would be
men dominating the political, economic, social sphere, etc. Right.
What I'm saying is, you can have a just world even though you have a dominating group of people, right? And I'm just saying this is
that world is just if the people in control of what just is are all the same. See what I mean about how? I want you to explain why that would be logical.
It's very simple. The people, right? If you had perfect access to knowledge,
dictator.
If you had equal access to knowledge, perfect access to knowledge, and you were to survey the people, you would know whether or not it's just and right according to what the people say. right? And so that's very simple. All I'm talking about is a logically possible world, right? And there's no contradiction in having people being dominant in a society, and for them to also bring about fair rules.
Okay,
So
great.
that's what I'm talking about.
Within your eyes, the social system where a man has the dominant power in whatever context, is that a logical system to you?
I just said, okay, I'm saying that the system is not inherently illogical, right? But I'm telling you that the way that I'm seeing it being enforced and enacted is a world that I would not prefer. So, for example,
I'm not talking about
I don't like that. I don't like the essentializing.
Uh-huh.
Joe. I don't like the essentializing of male behavior characteristics, where a lot of women that I'm, or just even men, like Fresh and Fit talk about this a lot. Oh, you got to make heck of money, and you have to, or else you're not going to be considered a man of value. Or like, I want my man to make hundreds of $1,000s, or like, why the heck would I date him? Like, rather than like seeing like you for who you are in your personality and want to work together to grow together and like try to achieve something and in the collaboration and like and pursue that endeavor, they would rather say that. And also like some people, some women, right, like this, that adhere to like toxic patriarchal norms, say like, I don't want my man to cry on my shoulder, I don't want him to express his emotions, I just want him to be stoic and be that hard rock, etc. Like, and I'm saying that people who adhere to these social norms of traditional patriarchal norms are what I believe is irrational, is illogical.
And why is it irrational and illogical? What are people met with when they try to adhere to that system?
The reason I believe it's irrational is because I believe I have the value of liberalism. And so that means that, people should not be viewed a certain way, like inherently, just because of some immutable characteristic. That's one of the consequences of liberalism.
Sorry, this is going to take a while. This is going to take a long time. And I
don't understand the line of questioning Joe's trying to ask.
Joe,
you get to your conclusion, really.
Sure. Yeah, I have two sentences. I think all the systems that we are talking about right now, white in particular in no order, white supremacy, racism broadly, but by proxy, patriarchy, sexism, all these things are imperfect systems. So if you try to approach those systems and critiquing those systems with logic and reason, you will only be met with these contradictions. And when you try to actually engage with those things in a logical, reasonable manner, it's a fool's errand to approach an irrational, illogical system with logic and reason. I don't think that's compatible with each other.
Okay, sorry. Well,
that doesn't even make any sense.
Forever. So I gotta move past it. I want to give Zimi a chance to respond to all the things that like I said to her, and get her opinions, because that we kind of skipped past that. If Fanatic wants to say something at the end, I'll give him the last word. Then we can move on to the other topic, which we're halfway into already. But Zimi, please.
I'm so sorry. Remind me. So your point was that
I was completely right. You're completely wrong. No. My point was yeah. So I was just saying that like basically there are levels of buy-in to the patriarchy, right? There's levels of benefits to this patriarchy. But also I would say, and maybe this is just a semantic difference, right? But that in terms of maintaining the patriarchy, there's levels of that as well. There's some people more critical to the system. I agree with you. Absolutely. Right. But like, if there weren't all these small social interactions happening, right, in which people were saying this patriarchy system is right, correct, and legitimate, right, then eventually it falls apart. If it's just like a few rich men at the top, rich white men at the top, saying that this is the system that we should live in, and no one else buys into it, then it disintegrates. So I'm saying that part of this amalgamation of like social interactions is happening in YouTube, in TikTok, right? With these women who are promoting this system. This is how you should live. This is the best way to make it, right? This is how you get out of capitalism. I would say for those women, at the very least, who've made their livelihood, that yeah, they'd be maintaining patriarchy.
Right, so I guess my pushback for that would be like two things. One, and maybe I should clarify this. I don't believe that it's just like a few men, rich white men at
Yeah.
the top who maintain patriarchy. I think it's all men, black, white, everything in between. All
Okay.
men
Fair enough.
are complicit in, benefit from, and strive to maintain a system of patriarchy. Period. But the second to your second point about like these women who are actively this dark feminine thing, which is all new to me, right? Who are actively engaged in like attempting to kind of replicate like white middle class, families from like the 1950s, where like find yourself a rich man and then stay home and take care. I assume that's part of what their rhetoric is. From
Some of it is. Some of it is like more the soft life thing that Jim was talking about, where like we're like on private jets. We're not doing any domestic work, right?
Yeah.
That's for other people.
Yeah. So I would say the kind of pushback I would give you is again thinking beyond this. Like if we really think about, that's why I think it's important to like understand that there is one clear working definition of patriarchy, right? Which
That is
is
not how
it's a-
definitions work. I'm sorry.
Let me
That's just not how
This
definitions
is
work.
not
There's no
important.
one
It's
definition.
fine.
I think it's
fine.
ridiculous for anyone even to stop that.
I don't care. I want to hear her definition, and then I want to move past this. Fanatic can get a word in, and then we're going to move past it, please.
there's one clear definition of patriarchy, which is a system in which men hold political, economic, social power, etc. Right? We have to look at what happens when there's any kind of break in men's ability to maintain political, economic, and social power, right? So, for instance, men were able to maintain a ton of social power over women when they didn't have access to reproductive health care and choice, right? What happens as soon as women have access to that? You see women not staying in relationships that they don't want to be in. We now have the narrative of like, my granny and granddaddy was married for 60 years and they never got divorced, right? Because granny didn't have a choice, right? So let's look at what happens when women are finally allowed into educational institutions. Overtake it, right? Now in incoming classes, we see that like there are more young girls enrolled. What happens when women are given access to the economic system, the labor market? We now see that for the first time, women under 30 are out earning their male counterparts. Not Black women, all women, right? So when we think about what happens when there's a fundamental shift in the system, not in some like, oh, there's Candace Owens or there's this random group of divestors or now the dark feminine energy, like,
Yeah.
these things aren't like changing systems, right? Like these things aren't really moving towards like changing the fundamental orientation of like power in this country. When we look at when that's actually happened, you've by and large seen women make moves in the opposite direction. You give women access to divorces, divorce rate skyrockets. You give women access to contraceptives, marriage rates plummet. Anytime there's some kind of introduction into the system that is wide scale, right, that really changes the social, political, or economic context in this country, you see women take 10 steps away from it in mass. Right. I can't speak, yes, you have your dark energy, feminine girls, but really they're grifting. They're trying to get their coin. Whatever, sis. Right. So I think that's why we have to have a really clear understanding of like patriarchy isn't just who pays the mortgage and who stays home and who opens the door. Like we get stuck in talking about these romantic contexts and these relationships. Like let's talk about when like system, like things have been introduced to change the system. And what you see in by and large, women are not interested in upholding shit once they're given economic, political, and social access. Like like it just don't happen historically, right?
I'm sorry. I agree with most of what you said, but that
What you disagree with? I'm a convinced.
we can't spend too much time on this, but like I really want to explore that idea with you because white women are still a thing. But okay, let's go to Fanatic. If you have anything to say on this, and then we'll go on to the larger topic.
Yeah, sure. So I think ultimately patriarchy can be a buzzword, and sometimes people just use it flippantly, and then it ends up meaning all sorts of nonsense. But I would say that probably one of the large things, whenever I'm talking about the patriarchy, I just tend to think of it as a male-dominated society, a society that like pretty much like puts power or views men as to be more powerful. And I would say that the way that Women contribute to the patriarchy is in the gender norms that some women ascribe to and insisting that their children follow such gender norms. I know
Hmm.
plenty of women that will tell their children girls shouldn't be leaders. I remember one of my friend's grandmother. She was OD chauvinist. Like it was crazy. She would see Olympians, like Olympic athletes, the best in the world that were women, and she would be saying things like she should be home taking care of her family. She should already have children by now. Like she's actually failing as a person. That's a woman that was deeply entrenched in the ideology of male leadership and of the gender norms of her day and age. And so I would say that it perpetuates itself all the time whenever people instill or inculcate such values into their children. I think I'm a pretty conservative person, and so I think I would probably instill some sorts of I think I would probably be patriarchal in my approach when it comes to my children. One, that's because that's the way society is, and two, I'm a biblical fundamentalist. However, I think within that, I still also recognize that everyone has liberty. Everyone has liberty, and so I'm gonna always probably promote within my children. Like if my daughter wants to be an achiever, go ahead and do that. And I think if my daughter wants to be a leader, she can go ahead and do that. And the idea, I want all of my children to fulfill life in the way that makes sense for them. And as long as they follow the Bible to the best of their ability, then they'll be good. But I think the notion that only people like it's an excuse to try to make it so that anytime a woman perpetuates it, she's doing it out of survival. Because sometimes, like yes, a person can be doing something out of survival, and it still perpetuates patriarchy, right? So, like the intention doesn't negate the action. It doesn't negate the norm that you're inculcating in the children. It doesn't negate like the outcome. And the outcome, if you're raising children with the ideology of like male dominance and male leadership, and that women should be demure and subservient, then in that case, then yeah, you're definitely perpetuating the patriarchy. Because if that child then influences their friends and their children, your grandchildren will also be perpetuating the patriarchy. So ultimately, I think whatever works for you, go ahead and pursue it. I just think there's a right way to be and there's a wrong way to be, and some people are going to choose whatever works best for them and give you the right ability to do so, and put yourself in your own misery.
I have a short question. I know we got to move on. I have a short question for Fanatic that can get a short answer. It can just be a simple yes or no. Um, are you saying if you had a daughter, I guess your priority for her wouldn't be like an expectation for her to excel, I guess, in whatever she's doing. Like it would be just around general happiness or something more than
Somewhat,
being
but I don't know. I'm kind of weird. I would probably expect excellence out of all my children. I
okay.
don't believe that I'm like that they're supposed to be average. But I do recognize already, like it was something that like happened, without me even really paying attention to it. I used to always make this statement. I wanted to have a boy and a girl. And I wanted to make sure like that the boy was born first because I wanted wanted him to be able to protect his younger sister. And I realized like probably about a couple years ago, like literally from my child isn't even born and I already have ideas and plans and expectations and weights on my son. And then for my daughter, I've never had it. It's just she just has to exist, right? And I think that is like kind of what we do in society. Men like are tasked with they're just tasked in general. Men are valued for what they provide and for what they do. Women are just valued for existing. And I think that's something that has existed literally because of the same thing going way back, where just literally existing and finding a suitor was enough for you to be able to be, for you to like contribute to the family, contribute to the wealth, contribute to your health, and all of those things. So, and I think those norms have existed, and I didn't even realize that was something that I was perpetuating. Like, man, I really don't really, I've never had an expectation for my daughter outside of just be the best version of yourself you can be a moral person, be a Christian. That's it. Aside from that, I never really had any ideas. Whereas with the son, it's like, nah, he's gonna be this, and he has to emulate these traits of mine, and he has to, it's just there's all of the things. He's gonna carry the family name. There's all of this weight and expectation that we put on men that we don't put on women. Lastly, when it comes to this like the thing that we touched on at the very beginning of the conversation, someone pointed out we hurl insults at men and call them virgins. If a man is a virgin, we call him a virgin as an insult. It's not an insult to a woman. That same mentality has persisted. This is why there's going to be shaming when it comes to women and not towards men, because we're calling you an when like you call a man an incel, right? Involuntarily celibate, right? Involuntarily, because he's not choosing it. He can't acquire the thing that he wants, right? Whereas with women, we don't use that phrase like that, unless again it's a beluga whale. So ultimately, we do have totally different expectations for men and for women. This is just society. These are just facts. Now, I did go into like what caused it, like at the beginning, but I'm just saying like these are the norms and so on and so forth. And then I expounded even more, like later on saying like, yeah, this had to do with dowries and so on and so forth, da da da. And we can expound even more. Oh, the dowry and all those things and the expectation had to do with the patriarchy. We can keep on going and drilling further and further down. But I'm giving it in layers at a time because like we're having an actual conversation. This isn't a freaking thesis.
Okay. It could be a yes or no answer, but it won't be. We're
You know who
my
I
man
am.
Fanatic.
You
Okay.
know who I am, nigga.
He elaborates when he wants to.
I sure do.
I mean,
Okay. So let's we got to move on to the topic.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to come up any which way in the topic. I think we're halfway into it.
Yeah, we built a lot of groundwork for it. For sure.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, hey, Bam, thank you for giving those 2 subs earlier. I've been meaning to say that for a while,
Good.
but thank you for giving those 2 subs. Crazy Coke, 15 minutes ago, thank you for using your Prime Gaming here on the channel. Saying, keep doing your thing. I will. And this is part of it. Hey guys, if you support this community, please consider supporting the channel by gifting bits, gifting subs. Remember, this is September, and so your dollars go farther. So if you haven't contributed yet, consider doing that now. Because you need your Prime Gaming. If you have one of those, use that here so I can keep inviting all these great individuals back and having these fun conversations. But I do need your help. Support the channel, sub to the channel, get bits or give subs. If you're on YouTube, consider a super chat. I've been keeping track of the YouTube. So if you're out there, consider a super chat. It will, respond to your comment. And it'll be fun. I don't know, whatever, right? Also consider becoming a member or whatever it might be. If you're a subscriber on Twitch, you get your emotes, you get your happy feeling, and you'll get that warm feeling in your gut because you support this community. All right. So let's jump into it. I'm gonna read the topic. Bam's gonna play a video. He's gonna get that thing ready while I'm talking.
Ready.
It's already
You
ready?
stay ready. You ain't got to get ready.
It's okay. I didn't see it pop up because it pops up on my thing.
Oh yeah, I haven't
okay.
presented yet, but I got you.
Yeah, just present it, and I can.
Shotgun.
Okay. All right. So I'll read the prompt. So, the legendary actor James Earl Jones died a few days ago. He had an illustrious career spanning decades. However, now that he is gone, the internet is rediscovering thoughts he expressed on Black women and interracial relationships. Among other things, he felt Black women were quote-unquote militant, and this is why Black men didn't want to date them. An article points out that other famed Black men from this era have had similar sentiments. How should we view these comments? Is this another case where the views were understandable for their time? Or do you see in older Black men like James Earl Jones the reflection of current red pill social media stars? And do you feel Black men continuously fail Black women? James Earl Jones, who is, a man I've always appreciated for his work, but without knowing anything really about him personally, right? I am actually learning about this as well. But this is an old interview, and we're gonna show it in a second. This is an old interview from like the 70s, I guess. But yeah,
1968.
72.
Oh my God, yeah. So long ass time ago.
He repeated it again. There's another interview more recently. He said it again.
Okay.
Wait, really
And
quick,
then he was
can
actually
you link-
old then.
Zimi, can you link that? I'm actually.
Yeah, let me find it.
Yeah,
Please
throw that
find
in a
that.
group jam if you can, please.
The way you said that was so petty.
Well, who said that?
It was a long time ago. I just want to say he has similar sentiments. Again, I think in the 90s. So let me find out.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
So
he
long.
was spitting. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Oh,
let that man live.
God.
Spitting, he was bunny hopping.
No, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. We'll get to that part. But yeah, so this interview features a young James Earl Jones, what I hadn't seen until like yesterday when I first saw this interview, right? And he was pretty handsome. But in any case, like yeah, he was saying
What?
some. Yeah, so
James Earl
handsome.
Jones in his
Handsome guy.
40s under, that man was a problem. You can look at me like, oh, this man's a
Are
problem.
we watching the
Yeah.
same video?
Okay, whatever. That doesn't matter. Sorry, let's ignore that part.
Dream said he ain't cute to me.
Yeah, it's like,
He will be that. He would be, I mean, this man looked like one of the king of the light skins. He may not be a king. He's definitely a prince.
He's balding. He has a gap. He doesn't look really in fit.
Let's move forward.
I'm really wondering what standard of good looks are you using?
I'm sorry. Let's just move forward. But in any case, yeah, so he gives this interview and he has very spicy takes. So we're gonna look at that interview and we'll kind of discuss, sexual relationships. Okay, there we go. At stage. Okay. If you could, bam.
Yeah, I hope my sound didn't mess up. You know it always is low.
Yeah.
Because of the nature of women, I know in some of our earlier conversations,
we got double.
Black women,
Is it me?
have been
It's probably.
me?
Maybe not. It might not be. Hold on. Try to play it again.
uptight.
Oh, it's coming from Zimmy. So hold on. We're gonna don't worry. I'm gonna mute you, Zimmy. So
Sorry.
no problem. Go ahead. Play.
Well, I'll answer the one question.
Sorry from again because people didn't hear the question.
Toward a more militant. Do black men marry white women because of the nature of black women? I know in some of our earlier conversations you mentioned that the black women you've met have been uptight. What do you mean by that? Well, I'll answer the one question. What do I mean by uptight? Going toward a more militant attitude about their own identity. And in many ways are way ahead of the black man because I don't know why, but in many ways are replacing the black man. There's a whole, there's an almost unfeminine aspect of the black militant woman. Do you find that some black women you've known out of your personal experience blame the black man for what happened to them in slavery even today? Of course. If the black man, regardless of the causes, failed to protect her, left her in a position where she had to sell herself or bargain with her body and so on. Yes, she had there's a resentment about that, but it's very complex now. You see, I think in another generation you'll get a whole crop uptight about their position in society. There are many. Because I'm generalizing now, many are overreacting against Aunt Jemima, the Aunt Jemima image, the submissive Mother Earth type, unselfish, all giving, especially all giving to the white man, sexually and in the kitchen and every other way. And she's also overreacting against the problem of having to be the breadwinner, the matriarch of the house. The myth of the black matriarch is really a myth because she is not. It wasn't her choice. Many black women, I'm sure, once they found this job had a certain social and political dignity to it, relished it and wielded the rolling pen, like any minority group mama would do. But no matter how much she might relish it, it wasn't her choice to begin with. She would always have preferred the black male to have run the house, to have saved her from white rapists, white slave owners. Why did you marry?
How about say I don't. Do we need her position on it?
Yeah,
Or
I want to
we
hear
good?
her. Yeah.
Oh no, her position is
Okay.
crazier.
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry, Jim. But first, do you know what Jim means by the uptightness of black women?
Oh, yes.
You've been in the theater.
Well, I've felt it. I've sensed it with almost every black woman that we know, whether they accept me or not. You know, whether there's always a tolerance, but there's always hostility behind it. I can understand it intellectually. Thank God I didn't have to go through the process that made it occur. I happen to think it's a good thing that they're showing hostility. I think it's the only thing they can show at the moment. And I think out of the hostility, I think that's a healthy sign.
Okay. So we'll leave that alone for now. All right. So we're gonna have let's open statements. We'll start with Bam, work our way around.
Yeah. First thing I want to say is I'm surprised me and Fanatic have made it through another topic without getting to me. I don't know if I don't know how this happened. We got to be going on a record right now, but it's crazy. Let's see.
Oh, because I
let's see how
wasn't
that goes.
involved. I didn't even talk on that topic. I just let you.
Oh, that's why. Gotcha. But I don't know. I think that my position is actually that what James Earl Jones said was more complex than I think a lot of people pick one side or the other on this. I think it's actually more complex. I think he was actually reiterating a lot of the statements that I've heard from in a lot of like black feminist scholars work, in that black women were thrusted into a position of leading a household, not out of like pride or not out of like overcoming something, but basically because they didn't have a choice to do so, because the men in a lot of cases weren't there. And I understand why that can create a level of resentment, anger, backlash, and like even as the woman said, like sometimes justifiably so, especially with how the system treats them. So to all of that, I don't think that came from a bad place. Like I said, I could understand that, but I also understand a lot of black women's and people's like pushback against it, to the idea of like, I don't know, he almost made black women feel in some ways animalistic, like they were like primal. I don't know, they were they were primal basically, and they only knew how to respond out of emotion, or they were something to be talked at instead of talked to. I know he was just answering the question, but I get that, and I think broadly outside of James Earl Jones, it's interesting to consider how we end up weighing basically black people or people we see as like valuable to society, or we have such high praise for, when we hear that they do have some like controversial statements or language. So that's it.
Okay. Dream.
Right. So how should we view these comments? I have a problem with like